This recent statement from the White House alleging that the Syrian government was planning an upcoming chemical attack. Are you concerned that that could have created an opening for terrorist groups to carry out a chemical attack?
On the night of June 26th, Press Secretary Sean Spicer stated, and on Twitter he made this statement, the United States has identified potential preparations for another chemical weapons attack by the Assad regime that would likely result in the mass murder of civilians, including innocent children. The activities are similar to the preparations the regime made before its April 4, 2017 chemical weapons attack. As we have previously stated, the United States is in Syria to eliminate the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. If, however, Mr. Assad conducts another mass murder attack using chemical weapons, he and his military will pay a heavy price. Now, if you all recall the last so-called chemical weapons attack in Syria by Assad, supposedly, you need to know some background information. In early 2017, the new U.S. president made positive comments about the Syrian government. Assad can stay, he said. The Syrian military and its allies gained the upper hand and were victorious on all fronts. However, 2 days later, another chemical attack was staged in the al-Qaeda-held town of Khan Sheikhoun. Lots of jihadi video coverage of children killed, likely prepared in advance, was spilled onto Western public. The U.S. intelligence knew that no chemical attack by the Syrian government had taken place, but the Trump administration used the incident to launch a volley of cruise missiles against a Syrian military airport. The neoconservatives were delighted. Everybody recalls this, I'm sure. The end of the war in Syria is in sight. One can start to tabulate the winners and losers. The U.S. military conceded that it had lost the race to occupy southeast Syria. All these turns in favor of Syria to show that the war is practically won unless some of the outside sponsors of the Takfiri rebels again escalate. Such an escalation is now happening. The White House claims to have information that the government is preparing a chemical weapons attack to kill innocent children. An anonymous statement issued with no supporting evidence or further explanation. Okay, that's the key thing. There is no evidence. They have produced no evidence to us. If you recall, back before the election, before Trump was elected, he was against attacking Syria. Do you recall this?
Okay, so let's move on from Asia. What do we have now? Okay, let's go to Syria then.
Now let's move on to Heather Nauert. She is a journalist who used to work for Fox and Friends and ABC News. Now she's the spokesperson for the United States Department of State. But she's not a good liar, you'll see.
Sir, I'm sorry, tell me your name.
Oh, I'm Caleb with RT.
Oh, right, Caleb.
This recent statement from the White House alleging that the Syrian government was planning an upcoming chemical attack. Are you concerned that that could have created an opening for terrorist groups to carry out a chemical attack?
No.
You're not concerned, even though al-Nusra, al-Qaeda groups have been using chemical weapons in Syria? That's documented?
No. Next question on Syria.
Well, I mean, they could carry out a chemical attack, and then with the White House saying, oh, Assad was going to do it, that would create a cover for them to do such a thing.
Do I have to do this again? We know that Assad has used chemical weapons on his own people, and he's done that repeatedly.
Well, hasn't the United States convinced the world that
including women and children, and we have all seen that. We have all seen the video, and there is no debate about that. Okay.
So
I'm going
to Assad give up his chemical weapons in 2013?
No.
Didn't that happen?
No.
That didn't happen, so the
let's go over to you. Anything else on Syria?
Yeah. Said before, are you saying that al-Qaeda has not used chemical weapons?
I'm not going to get into this conversation with you about this because no. You want to have a debate, okay, about a hypothetical. Okay, and I'm not going to get into a debate.
That there's a pending chemical attack,
I'm not going to get into a debate about a hypothetical.
But if you announce that, then they could carry out an attack, and it would look like the government did it. I mean, isn't that a real possibility?
If you want to try to make excuses for the Assad regime, Go
I'm
right
not
ahead.
talking about
You've
Assad,
got a
I'm
lot
talking
of
about
cameras on you
terrorist
right
groups.
now.
I'm talking about Al-Qaeda and
Okay, and I'm
al-Nusra.
not going to spend all our folks' time having that conversation. We all know here in this room that Bashar al-Assad is responsible for chemical attacks on his own people, including women and
And
children.
isn't Al-Qaeda
We are
also-
not going to
isn't Al-Qaeda
debate it
responsible for
beyond
such
beyond
things?
that. Al-Qaeda, horrible too, but
Uses
what we're
chemical
talking about
weapons?
right now is Assad and Syria.
Well, I asked you about Al-Qaeda.
Next
That's what
question.
I was asking for clarification
Something else
on.
on Syria? Russia? Okay, let's go to Russia.
Didn't that remind you of the teacher who could not answer a question from a student? How she just totally manipulated the whole conversation and she wouldn't answer the question and used the fallacy that everybody knows point A, you're trying to suggest point B. But that's not the case. Assad did not use chemical weapons on his people. It didn't happen before. It didn't happen in April. And it certainly is not going to happen again. He was out visiting his people this last weekend. You don't do that when you're about to set off chemical weapons. In addition, Washington AP reports the Pentagon on Tuesday said it detected active preparations by Syria for chemical weapons attack, giving weight to White House statement earlier that the Syrian government would pay a heavy price if it carried out such an attack. The Pentagon spokesman, Navy Captain Jeff Davis, said the U.S. had seen quote-unquote activity at the Shayrat airfield that indicated active preparations for chemical weapons use, end quote. That is the same base from which the Syria Air Force launched an attack in April that the U.S. and others said used lethal chemicals to kill civilians. Syria denied the charge. Well, hang on, let's remember this. It's a base that hardly had any activity on it whatsoever. It was, if you recall this, and it was just a little bitty hole from which the chemicals came from. It looked like, from initial reports, that it was Al-Qaeda or al-Nusra or ISIS or whatever they're calling them today, had a bomb, and whatever bombing run had gone over them had hit a truck with it on there or something to that effect. Anyway, to continue this report, President Bashar Assad's government and Russia dismissed the White House allegation that Damascus was preparing a new chemical weapons attack. Russian President Vladimir Putin's spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that such threats to Syria's legitimate leaders are unacceptable. Russia is Assad's key backer and sided with him when he denied responsibility for a chemical weapons attack that killed dozens of people in an Idlib province on April 4th. Now, don't forget, we have reported about the bodies being stolen, the children's bodies being stolen from the hospitals and used as props in the media campaign after that so-called attack. The U.S. responded to that so-called attack by hitting the airfield with dozens of cruise missiles. Don't forget, what was it? Something like 70 cruise missiles were sent over and only 59 hit? Or something like 34 of them had missed or something like that. I don't recall the exact details. I don't have that in front of me right now. But I remember that. Many of them missed. Tomahawk cruise missiles are not accurate. It's a waste of money. Think of how much money each missile costs. Anyway, those activities were similar to preparations taken before the attack in April, but provided no evidence or further explanation. Guys, they're going to do this thing. They're going to attack Assad again and blame this chemicals. They're going to do a false flag. This is a false flag, and that is that. False flags are abundant here in our country, outside of our country, and I guess because the Philippine false flag attack did not work, and that is regarding the USS Fitzgerald, because that one didn't work, we got to get this one going again. That's what's going on here. Find your quantum connections at truthfrequencyradio.com.